Welcome. We're in a series called A Man After God's Own Heart, the life of David in the Bible, and today is part 22, and we're in 2 Samuel, chapter number 6. If you can read along, turn your Bibles there with me. I think it's good to see with your eyes as well as hear with your ears, if that's possible. So 2 Samuel, chapter number 6. David is now the king over all Israel. Ishbosheth is dead. He's been anointed by the other tribes, and he is stationed in Jerusalem. And so one of the things that he wants to do is bring the Ark of the Covenant back to Israel. The Philistines have had it at this point in the narrative, and he's going to go and retrieve it. There is a bit of a problem, though, because of a decision that he makes. So let's get to it. 2 Samuel 6, verse number 1. Again, David gathered together all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people that were with him from Baal of Judah to bring up from thence the ark of God, whose name is called by the name of the Lord of hosts that dwelleth between the cherubims. And they set the ark of God upon a new cart, and brought it out of the house of Abinadab that was in Gibeah, and Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, drave the new cart. So we're going to focus on that word new there. It was given to us twice already. Now, what's been happening is the Philistines had taken the Ark of the Covenant in battle, and they brought it to the house of Dagon, and God caused the statue of Dagon to fall on his face in front of the ark. And then they propped the statue back up. He fell again, and his head came off. I think his hands came off as well. And so then all of the men started to get diseased because of the ark being in their possession. So they put the ark in a cart and put a couple oxen, I think, with it. They smacked the oxen on the hind quarter and sent the oxen away. They just wanted the Ark of the Covenant gone. So ultimately, it ends up here in the house of Abinadab. And so David says, let's go get it. Let's bring it back to Jerusalem. And he says, verse 3, they set the Ark of God upon a new cart and brought it out of the house of Abinadab. The sons of Abinadab drave the new cart. Now, if you know anything about the Old Testament law at all, you know that when God created or had Moses build the pieces of furniture of the the pieces of furniture of the tabernacle, all of the pieces of furniture were built with rings on the corners of the pieces. And then staves or long staffs were made to run through those rings. And every piece of furniture was made to be carried by 4 men. And so if you can imagine a rectangular box, and on each corner of the box is a ring affixed, and then through those rings 2 long staves are made so that they extend beyond the ends of this box, and then 1 man on each corner lifts up the box with the stave. That's how all the pieces of furniture were carried. This isn't new information. This is widely known. In fact, this Ark of the Covenant still has its rings on the corners of it. But instead of carrying it the way that God had told the people to carry it, David makes a cart. Now, you can tell he knows he's not doing the right thing because he makes a new cart. He doesn't just find some old cart, clean it out, and put the ark in it. He says, let's bring the ark back, but who wants to carry that big heavy thing after all? Let's just build a nice new cart. We'll put it in the back of the cart. And so let's see what happens. Verse number 4. And they brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was at Gibeah, accompanying the ark of God, and Ahio went before the ark. So remember, Ahio and Uzzah, these are the sons of Abinadab. They're the ones moving down the road. Ahio is in the front, leading the ark. And David and all the house of Israel played before the Lord on all manner of instruments made of fir wood, even on harps and on psalteries and on timbrels and on cornets and on cymbals. So this is a big celebration. Everybody's happy. There's 30,000 people here, and they're moving down the street and celebrating and playing music. The Ark of God is coming back to Jerusalem. It's a big deal. Verse 6, and when they came to Nachon's threshing floor, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. So you've got this cart, brand new cart, two oxen are pulling this cart. The ark is in the back of the cart, and whatever happened, these oxen, when they get to the threshing floor of Nachon, I don't know, potholes, ruts in the road, who knows what it was. Maybe the oxen got spooked, and so the cart gets bouncing around, and the ark in the back of the cart begins to bounce around. So Uzzah, who's walking alongside the cart, reaches out his hand to touch the ark and steady the ark so that it doesn't fall out. Now that sounds like the right thing to do, doesn't it? Notice what happens, verse 7, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him there for his error. And there he died by the ark of God. So why does Uzzah die? Because God said no human being was to touch the ark of the covenant. It's a holy piece, consecrated, sanctified for a specific purpose. No human was to touch it. And Uzzah, even though he is well-meaning, reaches out to touch the ark to steady it. Now, there's a couple problems here. Number one is the problem of situational ethics. Some people believe that you're supposed to make certain choices based on how things are going to turn out. And that is not what God tells us to do. We're supposed to obey. It's what Saul said. I kept the animals back so that I could sacrifice them to you. Well, to obey is better than to sacrifice. We're not supposed to do what we do based on how it turns out. We're supposed to do what we do based on what is right and what is wrong. And God said, don't touch the ark. Uzzah could have said, well, I only did it to keep it from falling out. God said, I don't care why you did it. You aren't supposed to touch it, so don't touch it. So Uzzah dies. The second thing is, this ark wouldn't have been in need of stability if they had been carrying it properly. If instead of putting it in the back of a new cart, they had had the staves run through the rings and they were carrying it like they're supposed to. So one problem leads to the next problem. The ark wouldn't have been rocking around in this cart had they been doing it right. So by ignoring God's instruction, by doing what they thought best to do, they end up causing the death of this man. So how does David respond to this? David was displeased. But notice, he won't be displeased in himself, which is who he should be displeased with. He's displeased that this man died because that the Lord had made a breach upon Uzzah. And he called the name of the place Perez Uzzah to this day. And David was afraid of the Lord that day and said, how shall the ark of the Lord come to me? Well, how about read the law? You know, David, when you became the king, the Old Testament law said you were supposed to sit down and handwrite the law of God with your own hand so that that could be your copy. You should know that this ark isn't supposed to be in a cart like this. How is the ark supposed to come into me? Like God said, that's how. So David would not remove the ark of the Lord unto him into the city of David, but David carried it aside into the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. Let's stop there. So here, David is upset with God. We disobeyed God. We didn't do it the way he said. We used the end to justify the means, and then it ended up in a man's death, and it's all God's fault. You know, you can't blame God for your choice to disobey him. You can't blame God for deciding to do what you wanted to do instead of what he told you to do. And that's what David's doing. There are so many people who are upset with God and bitter at God and angry with him because they willingly disobeyed him, and then it didn't turn out like they wanted it to, and so they're upset. That's what David's doing here. Now he says, for the meantime, okay, party's over. Let's put this ark in this guy's house, Obed-Edom. And it says the ark of the Lord continued in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months. And the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. Very simple principle here. Time spent in the presence of God results in blessing. The more you spend time with God, the greater your blessings will be. It is an irrevocable equation. You spend one time with God, you get one blessing. You spend 5 times with God, you get 5 times a blessing. You spend 10 times with God, you get 10 times a blessing. That may sound overly simplistic, but that's the way it works out. The more you surround yourself with the presence of God and you choose to be in his presence, the greater the blessings you'll have. And Obed-Edom, because the ark's in his house, received blessings for 3 months. Verse 12, it was told King David, saying, the Lord hath blessed the house of Obed-Edom, and all that pertaineth unto him, because of the ark of God. So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom into the city of David with gladness. And so after David hears of the blessings, he says, you know what, that needs to come to Jerusalem, doesn't it? And so he goes and gets it and brings it back. And it was so that when they that bear the ark of the Lord, notice now, they that bear, it's not in a cart anymore, is it? There are men carrying it. The ark of the Lord had gone 6 paces. He sacrificed oxen and fatlings. And David danced before the Lord with all his might, and David was girded with a linen ephod. So this ephod indicates the royalty and kingship of David. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouting and with the sound of the trumpet. And as the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, Saul's daughter, looked through a window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. And they brought in the ark of the Lord and set it in his place in the midst of the tabernacle that David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And as soon as David had made an end of offering burnt offerings and peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts. And he dealt among all the people, even among the whole multitude of Israel, as well to the women as men, to every one a cake of bread and a good piece of flesh and a flagon of wine. So the people departed, every one to his house. So David's excited, he's leaping, he's dancing, he is feeding everybody in the town, and celebration. The ark of God has come back, and rightfully so. But did you catch that one little verse there that said, Michal, his wife, looks out the window, sees him, and she despises him. So let's find out what's behind that. Verse 20. Then David returned to bless his household. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet him and said, how glorious was the king of Israel today, who uncovered himself today in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as one of the vain fellows shamelessly uncovereth himself. So we read earlier that he has this linen ephod on, this garment that would project royalty, and somewhere along the line he seemingly took that off. Doesn't mean he's nude or naked. It means that he took off his royal apparel. So he's out there looking like a commoner, dancing and leaping and praising God. This bothers Michal. Michal has a reputation to uphold. She and David are the king and queen, and she doesn't like the fact that he's brought the shame onto them. And this is all sarcasm here. How glorious was the king of Israel today. Boy, what she's saying is, you really made a fool out of yourself. You know that? Then she says, who uncovered himself today in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants. Said, you know, you're out there getting the attention of the young girls here, acting like a young guy yourself. And then she says, as one of the vain fellows shamelessly uncovereth himself. So she rebukes him solidly here for his behavior. How does David respond? He said unto Michal, it was before the Lord, which chose me before thy father and before all his house, to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord, over Israel. Therefore will I play before the Lord. So he throws in her face, you know what? God chose me instead of your dad to rule Israel. He chose me instead of any of your brothers to rule over Israel. So, you know what? I'm going to do what I want to do. And I will yet be more vile than thus, and will be base in mine own sight. And of the maidservants which thou hast spoken of them shall I be had in honor. He said, you know what? I'll do worse than that. If you think I embarrassed you now, I'll embarrass you way, way worse than that. And he said, the funny thing is, you're looking down on me, but those handmaids you're talking about, they'll honor me. And then verse 23, therefore Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child unto the day of her death. And so one of two things happens. Either David decides he's done with Michal as his wife, and he's not going to give her any more children, or God had made her barren. We don't see that that's the case. Some people believe that and lean that way. It seems to me that perhaps David just held this grudge and carried it until she died. So quite the chapter there. Lots going on, lots to unpack. Notice the new cart. Don't do God's work in a new way that violates what he told us to already do. There are certainly things that we will do that are things that have never been done before, but not if we're changing something that he already told us to do. It's one thing to maybe try a new technique using the same old method that God gave us, but it's another thing to say, yeah, I'm done with God's methods and I'm going to come up with stuff on my own. That's never going to work. Then to blame God for something that you are responsible for causing, that's not good. To celebrate when God brings blessing is a good thing, and we don't need to worry about our reputations. Sometimes it's just time to relax and celebrate and praise God for who he is, and not worry about how everybody's perceiving us and what they're making of it all. And I wouldn't get bitter for life. I don't know if that's what David did, but